We'll give it 3 more minutes. Wait for mayor to show up. This is good enough. Calling this work session to order on Thursday, January 22nd at 6:05 p.m. Ms. Howell, if you will call roll, please.
Mayor Anderson. Present. Vice Mayor McDonald.
Present.
Ms. Eulis.
Present.
Mr. Pate.
Present.
Mr. Cowley.
Yo.
Mr. Dawson. Ms. Schilling. Mr. Ritt. Mr. King.
All right. We'll turn this over to staff.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. If you can, if you will all turn on the mics that are in front of you so that as we are discussing, I know we have 6 mics and several additional folks here. If you'll try to speak into the mic so that everybody in the audience and at home can hear us. Tonight, our goal is to go through the development code. To go through the development code and then to identify any changes that or conflicts that you've noted, and to discuss those as a group prior to our vote so that we can be working on getting a clean document for the February 10th meeting. I would appreciate if everybody, as you want to speak, if you'll address the chair so that we can have a smooth conversation. Remember that this is televised tonight so that everybody at home who's not able to attend can watch and participate. We'll get started.
Super.
We're sharing everything else.
I think this one works pretty good. This one is the better one?
I'm intending tonight for our staff to be here to answer questions. I have myself and Kevin Chastain here tonight to answer any questions as we go through this. Ultimately, we'll have another joint work session with the BOC and the Planning Commission. As of today, we are looking at February 10th prior to the Planning Commission meeting for that joint workshop.
Instead of Tuesday, right?
Correct. We had intended on having a joint work session on Tuesday, but due to the projected weather, we
they
will be
say.
canceling Tuesday night's workshop. Tuesday night, the 27th, we'll be canceling that workshop and moving it to February 10th prior to the Planning Commission meeting. And depending on how tonight goes, we'll either have it beginning at 5 or we'll have it start at 6, depending on how many questions we discover tonight.
The edits that we went through at the Planning Commission meeting last, were those incorporated into here?
Yes, all of the edits that we went through were incorporated between the public draft and the final draft.
Go ahead.
Jeff, you want
I
to
know
start
you
us
got
off
'em.
with questions?
I know you got them.
Yeah, I can, sure. I tried to kind of boil mine down to some bigger picture stuff. I submitted a whole bunch to staff, but that I think would be good for everybody to kind of talk about and consider. So the first one, something that is not in here, a lot of the discussion I've had with people out in the community is public participation and planning and public hearings and stuff like that. A lot of the codes I run into now, it's pretty common to require a public participation plan for, certain applications, not everything. If somebody's coming in with just a few lots or whatever. But usually that public participation plan requires the applicant to host a community meeting before it comes to the Planning Commission. So you can start getting community input, and then they would essentially provide a report back to staff and kind of give a report to the boards when they come and present. It's pretty common. I'd say we run into it in 60 to 70% of the municipalities that we work in on a regular basis. And so I just wanted to get the input of the group. I think staff, I think they were kind of waiting to be able to have some of these conversations rather than just taking a comment just from me for such a big change like that. We'd set thresholds like a subdivision would have to be at least 25 lots in order for it to trigger that and require it for the developer. A commercial one could be whatever, pick an acreage or pick a square footage, and require that. So that's kind of the first half of it. And then the second is I think we should seriously consider having public hearings at the Planning Commission level. Right now with the public hearing, any public hearings are the last reading with the BOC, and basically you're having the public hearing and then you're trying to act on it as the final body. Meanwhile, you've had 2 or 3 meetings where there hasn't really been any public input. So I think we should seriously consider adding some stuff to this, that's a combination of maybe the public participation plan for the larger things and then potentially adding a public hearing at the Planning Commission level. So I'll stop there on my first one and just see if anybody has thoughts on that. I think staff would love to hear if anybody thinks that's a good idea, bad idea, or not.
I'm not crazy about public hearing at our Planning Commission meetings only because we're looking at things from a legal perspective, right? Like, does it meet the zoning regulations? Does it meet on a checklist XYZ? And the community's opinion, to me, doesn't really fit into that perspective. Not that they couldn't have public hearings earlier in the process, not attached to our Planning Commission meetings, but they could have like Franklin does it. They do a community meeting pretty soon after something is submitted or an application is submitted. But I've seen folks who are pretty upset about something that's coming before us, and they have lots of opinions about it, but it shouldn't sway our decision because it should be based in fact and not opinions. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. But if they happen to have a good idea that we want to incorporate into
Sure.
the plan, it doesn't sway my opinion. It just has potential input because that's, the other possibility is moving the public hearing from the second reading to the first reading. A lot of communities do that where you literally, open it up then at least you have time between the first reading and the second reading at BOC. The other challenge is that there's some things that just don't even go to the BOC, site plans and stuff that, so public has no chance to give any input on. So anyway, again, I'm throwing it out there for discussion. So.
Little opinion on that. I think having a pre-read at a meeting prior to our planning commission and then the staff notes would collate that into considerations for us to think about. The problem is if everything we do is fact-based and we potentially jeopardize what we do on the about it, but the facts are in the code book, it can't necessarily influence the decision, and it kind of puts us in a bad spot too. It's sometimes the public almost comes to these meetings like we can do something about it, when maybe that's not the right forum for the public. When we're literally looking at the facts within the book, if there was a better forum for them to have something actionable for the staff, putting us on the spot and then disappointing the public when they thought we were the ones to talk to, and we were just like, well, it says here, yes, we can do this, or no, we can't. They don't know that that might not be the right forum for them. So that was my comment.
I just want to put out there, we need to address the chair before we speak, so it keeps in a Robert's rules.
Sure.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
If I may. I agree. I think moving it up at minimum to the first reading at the BOC is a good idea. I mean, you don't have any time to digest, investigate, dig deeper, whatever, on any point that's brought up from the public on the night of when you have that vote pending. And I think, too, it gives an opportunity for the public to be heard, their concerns to be heard, and then us an opportunity to address those concerns prior to them hearing a decision being made on it. Could also alleviate some tensions there. I don't know, is there any restrictions on that from a
So,
legal perspective?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
The first vote at the Board of Commissioners is what sets the public hearing date. It is within that resolution. And so without the first vote, you can't have a public hearing because you don't set the date. So from what I'm hearing, if you would like to not be voting on the item at the Board of Commissioners the same night as the public hearing, then we would have to have a first vote, a public hearing meeting, and then a following meeting that had the second and final read. There are several that do it that way, around the mid-state even.
Madam Chair, I mean, I've seen lots where it's still just two readings and they have it at the public reading. I don't know how they do it, but it happens all the time. So it might just be a matter of looking into that and tweaking. That's the whole point, is we're modifying the ordinance now, so we get the chance to make some of those changes. That may be in the charter though, but we just have to look at that. But one other thing I'll add too is, yes, we are the planning commission and we have to follow the ordinance. That doesn't mean we can't have an opinion. As long as what we are asking the applicant to do is within the ordinance, then we absolutely should have an opinion. It's our job to have an opinion and try to get the best possible developments we can for the city within the ordinance. And so I don't feel like, and this is just my opinion, I'm just addressing some of the comments I've heard. It doesn't bother me in the least to put ourselves in like a difficult legal position or anything. And we can just explain to people that we can ask for this, we can't ask for that. We do it all the time. It's just part of it. And I stand in front of planning commissions in public hearings all the time, and things come up, and sometimes the planning commission can require it and add it as a condition. Sometimes they can't, and it's not a problem. But again, that's just my opinion.
Okay. Any further discussion on that point?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Pape, could you expound on the public participation plan and some of the things that you've seen in other communities that you would like, that you've liked and wanted to bring here?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, typically the way it is if it triggers certain thresholds. So again, we could pick a number of lots for subdivisions, a number of acres or square footage for commercial, and then literally it becomes a requirement. Obviously, right now, the way it's set up, an applicant submits and it doesn't come to us till 2 months later. So you could literally say, you guys submit, and in that 2-month period, you have to host a meeting. And we can either offer them this room to schedule some night, but in plenty jurisdictions, it's up to the applicant to find a place to host the meeting, to advertise, to get it out there through however means they do. They host the public meeting. We are all aware of it. If anybody wants to attend, we certainly can because it's an advertised meeting. Typically, you wouldn't speak as a planning commission member there. Sometimes staff, in most cases, someone from staff attends as well, so they can see it and hear it firsthand. And then it usually, and at one point, I think I submitted an example of 1 or 2 municipalities, and then part of the follow-up is the applicant is then required to submit a report to staff. Staff would review that, and then either staff presents that at our meeting or the applicant talks about it at the meeting. So that, that is a great way to avoid the public hearing for us, but at least give the community a chance to input on larger projects before it comes to us.
I think Franklin does that, and it's a virtual meeting, or it could be in
Be either.
person, but they have from my history, lots of people show up virtually, and they can ask questions, and someone is presenting a virtual presentation, so it's easy for the community to participate in it.
And, I think a lot of them were in person. A lot of them converted over to virtual after COVID and never went back. But,
Madam Chair.
Sir?
So is that just for any kind of development? When would they have that meeting?
I mean, again, we're writing this code, so we can set the standards. We can say any subdivision over 25 lots has to have a public participation plan. Any commercial development over 5 acres has to have a public participation plan. Or maybe it's maybe it's a square footage on the commercial side. So we can decide, we don't want somebody coming in here for a 3-lot subdivision to have to host a community meeting. So we can set those standards, and then they would be required to have it from anytime they submit until the meeting, which is 2 months right now. They can also, everybody can read our ordinance and know that's coming. They're welcome to host the meeting a month before they submit if they want, so they can try to incorporate those potential comments they hear into their actual submittal. So you can do that as well. And part of the report really should be, what did you hear? Out of what you heard, did you make any changes? If you didn't, why didn't you? Kind of thing. So.
Love that idea. And when we start talking about community involvement, at least the community has the ability and option to sit in and provide feedback on these developments that are coming in. I love that idea.
Yeah, I think it was, if you have a development plan or a revision to a development plan in Franklin is what triggers it.
I mean, do we already do that kind of with the planning division? So the last meeting, they came with their proposal, or not proposal, that's not the correct
Conceptual
verbiage.
plan.
Conceptual plan, right? So, but I really like that idea.
With the conceptual plan, it's just us that gets to comment, not the public. That's the difference. So.
Madam Chair. With those meetings that would open that up to public discussion, is it customary for staff to be present during those? I would think that would kind of need to be, right?
My experience is yes. No, they just need, you need one representative
Okay,
of staff there to
okay.
kind of keep an eye on it, hear what's happening, kind of thing. So,
Somebody here.
if we want to do it here, but like I said, a lot of places leave it up to the developer on where they have it, and they'll rent the elementary school out, or they'll rent the rec center or whatever and host it there.
The only reason I say that is because there's no way for people who can't make it to see them.
Right.
If it's somewhere else but here.
Madam Chair, so would that increase the amount of time for a developer then, from submitting?
It shouldn't. I mean, again, from the time they submit till the time they're in front of us is 2 months. If they can't schedule that in that time period, I mean, I do it all the time. We literally on probably 70% of our applications, and I'm working in 18 different states right now and all kinds of municipalities, and probably 70, 80% of them have a public participation plan that I have to go through. It's just part of doing business.
How many citizens actually participate? How much participation do you see?
Depends on the project, but in most cases, you get pretty good turnout. I've had the lowest probably 15 people, the highest 200. So
Love the idea. So do we think about a size?
I think, yeah,
Tonight?
we should put it shouldn't be for every project, right? Just like the traffic study, there should be a minimum size requirement, and it be at the discretion of staff. If they think maybe there's a smaller project that's really complex or feels like there's going to be a lot of volatility with it within the community, you just leave it up to staff. But maybe we say, a PUD of 25 units or more must host a community engagement meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but there should be a minimum that we establish. Sure.
Well, we ran into that scenario a few months ago when the proposed racetrack meeting happened. A lot of participation from the public, rightfully so. But that may not have met some kind of threshold if we put 20, it's got to be 25 homes or whatever it's going to be. So maybe there's also a carve out for, under special consideration for the staff. If they see something that is unique, they
Special
can.
use districts or special use projects.
Secondly, what's the additional work requirement for the staff to be able to participate in these extra hearings, right? Because that comes at a cost too to the city of, more meetings and more hours. Just for consideration. Sure, Ethan wants to go.
Yeah. Let's leave that to the BSC to determine budgeting, but
Okay.
ultimately, it's a matter of, necessarily quite a budget thing, but schedule for our department is relatively small.
And Madam Chair,
Sure.
relative to that, I think we could potentially, you could just say there needs to be at least one city representative there. And like if staff can't go, one of us could volunteer. Different things. You could make it a little flexible so that it doesn't absolutely have to be one of the 2 or 3 staff members. I don't.
From my perspective, I think the size of the project and the characteristics of the project matter. Typically, we are seeing developments that are around 40 units. That is the largest percentage of developments that we've had coming in. So somewhere greater than 25, somewhere less than 40, I think probably is in the range of where we would need to require something like that. Especially if you're a member of the public, 35 new homes in your backyard is a significant change to have an opinion on.
Okay, so 25 units or at the discretion of staff based on proposed community feedback.
Can we get a head nod if everybody is good with 25
Madam
units?
Chair, yes.
And Madam Chair, I would add like a commercial one too, like either 5 acres or like 25,000 square feet, so that there's a trigger on that. And then again, staff discretion, if they know something's coming in that's going to have significant interest, that they can require that.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
so just to be clear, we're asking for what to happen with 25 or staff?
The developer or the applicant must host a community meeting for the benefit of the community to voice their opinion.
Okay, so does that have to be advertised and,
This would be on the developer to host it at their expense, on their timeline.
so then that would come under Sunshine Open Records Act violation if more than one BOC member attended? So it wouldn't be for the BOC?
The BOC
It's open to the public. That's
Well,
never been an
but-
be
issue.
open to the public. The BOC
It's
could
advertised.
attend.
Yeah.
But that's what I asked, and they said no.
But the developer advertises it. It's up to the developer to advertise
Okay.
it. It's, I mean, to get away from the sunshine laws, all you need to do is post it in one public place, and that clears you on the sunshine laws. It doesn't have to be advertised per a public hearing,
But also,
in my
Well,
experience.
I asked about advertising, and it was said
you-
no. So I
the
just
city-
want to be clear.
the city would not be advertising for it. It would be the developer going out, knocking on doors, or putting it out, sending out mailers, however they,
They have to certify mail all the adjacent properties. That the,
So any development over 25 homes, I just want to be clear for what we're going to put in here.
sure.
Over 25 homes,
I guess I should probably be clear on this as well. Things that we discussed tonight, that we come to a agreement should be in here. When we draft the resolution for this document, for the planning commission to make their recommendation, these will all be items that are a part of the resolution as an exhibit presented from the planning commission to the board of commissioners. So the board of commissioners will ultimately get to make a yay or nay vote on if each of these items get in, but it will be presented as the resolution is to adopt the document, and the exhibit will be with these additional items that the planning commission has recommended.
Madam Chair,
Ma'am.
what happens if they just don't do it?
That's a good question.
Madam Chair, my experience is you don't get docketed on the planning commission agenda.
Right, I was going
That's
to say,
simple.
do you not get?
Yeah.
Okay,
You don't move forward in your
got it.
application process.
Fair.
Yes, ma'am.
continuing, so 25 homes or recommended by staff,
Or a
Or-
special use.
or special use, and that would constitute the developer having their own private public hearing. Town hall, something like that,
Correct.
at a place that they choose,
In the community.
opened in the community, open to whoever comes. Now, would the staff need to be there, or they're just gonna just kind of have the community in to discuss what their plans are?
I think one staff member should be there, whether it's in person or virtual. But someone to be able to answer any kind of city-based questions.
And this is in between the planning commission and BOC, or before it ever begins?
I think it should be as soon as they submit an application.
They go ahead and have a meeting with the public?
Correct.
Okay. I'm just trying to get it all straight. Okay.
Typically, before you ever appear before any of the boards. So, depending on what type of application. Yeah. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I have a follow-up question as well. It sounds like there's interest to look further into this. Mr. Greer, is it possible to ask TPUDC if they have put any language surrounding this topic in any of the other documents that they've put together? Just curious how, if they have, what that looks like, especially around like thresholds and stuff. They might have some data to support it.
Get that on the list.
I think too, like you get into, there's probably a 25 lot development where you would have a packed house, but then there's also other 25 unit developments where you might not have a single person show up. So there's probably some data where like this is when you typically start hearing people out. Enough people are making noise about it. Just to not waste time.
Sure. Okay. It sounds like we're in agreement on that item. Right, any more discussion about it,
Madam Chair?
sir?
So can it be just virtual, or does it have to be in person, or can it be a combination of both?
I think it should be both, because I think you're going to have a lot of people that want to be in person, and then there's going to be some people that can't make it. Like, people are watching this live, even though they're not able to interact.
So the people that put this on have to have a virtual aspect to it also?
Correct.
Okay, so that'd be in the rules or whatever.
Yep. Okay. All right. Do we need to?
No
Put it on
votes.
it.
The work session.
Just-
We're getting way too formal for a work
Sorry.
session.
We're just tossing ideas out of here.
Okay.
The whole point of a work session is to be interactive. So,
That's why we're sitting down here tonight
yeah,
instead of
I
up top.
appreciate that. Yeah.
All right. What's next? I know you got more.
Anybody? Okay, I'll go with another one. This kind of ties to, it's kind of blending two things together, is how restrictive we want to be with certain things. A lot of the comments from the public were, are we really going to document garage doors and things like that and stuff? And so that's part of it. But a lot of the focus has been on residential, and you all know what I do is commercial. So I was looking at this from a commercial perspective. I have interacted with TPUDC codes in multiple municipalities here in Nashville, and I just want to make sure everybody understands some stuff relative to the commercial side of this. So in the commercial side, their restrictions are pretty specific in things like required setbacks and stuff. And right now, we don't have a ton of commercial here, but this code is going to be in place for a long time. And I think the best way to kind of describe it is using an example. So let's say Target suddenly showed up next week and said, we want to be on the site down next to Jingo Mart, and we want to land there. They would look at this code and turn around and run away, because this code would require them to put their building within 18 feet of the right-of-way, have their front door facing the right-of-way, and have all their parking behind the building. So that's what this code says. And so, do we want to be that restrictive from a commercial standpoint? Or the other option, so we can either really dig into that section, which is the CD4C, and look at tearing that apart and digging into that. Or the thing that our code doesn't currently have is basically, we call it PODs now, but a lot of them have gone to calling it PDs, Planned Development District, where you're still allowed to do that, and we can set our own standards. And again, you could set thresholds and say, somebody can't come in here and ask for PD zoning for a 5-acre subdivision or a 5-lot subdivision or a 1-acre out parcel. But we could say for certain size projects, we are allowed to still do a PD zoning and go through that process and add that back in. Some of the municipalities that have worked with TPUDC have put that back in. TPUDC doesn't prefer it. We're glad to ask them about it. I've talked to them about it. They feel like their code gives enough flexibility. I don't happen to agree with them. So that's just something to consider relative to that. I think the easiest solution is to have them, put a PD zoning back in here so that we have some flexibility. I think it'd be hard to come in and start tearing apart the commercial zones to try to really make that all happen. And the PD gives us a little more control, because that way, it's not just any retailer. If, Big Lots showed up, we don't have to grant them a PD. If Target shows up, we may want to grant them a PD. It gives us a little more flexibility. So it's just one thing that I wanted everybody to think about, just because of my experience interacting with the TBUDC code in certain areas. One example is in Columbia. They have this code form, and Walmart Neighborhood Market wanted to land on the north side of Columbia. And from what I was told, for a normal, typical Walmart Neighborhood Market layout, they needed 27 variances from this code to do that. Obviously, we're fortunate. We have plenty of grocery stores. But another example is our Publix would not be able to build the way it is today based on this ordinance. So it's just something to think about. And what they're doing is they're trying to set it up to where everything feels villagey. All the buildings up by the road, all the parking in the back. So I understand why they're doing it. But I think we want a little flexibility that if somebody showed up that we thought was a really good add to the community, that we have that flexibility.
Madam Chair.
Sure.
So I actually spoke with Columbia about their Walmart up on, I think it's Honey Farm or
Honey
something.
Farms.
So that Walmart, how they ultimately decided to do it, and I have it pulled up here if you don't mind taking a look. It is this section of land from that roundabout out to the road. And how they ultimately decided was they split this into 2 lots. They have one lot. The lot line division is kind of here in the middle. They have the Walmart actual building is back here. And then for this front lot, they did a principal use as a parking lot, as the principal use for that front lot. And so, although maybe not necessarily the intent of the code, the intent is to have the commercial frontage be up against the right of way. The way that they did it, I felt satisfied both of those with being able to pull that building back off of the right of way. Walmart is still getting their traditional parking up front. And what they did with that along the lot line division is they created a thoroughfare. So you have a landscaped parking lot that kind of separates. It doesn't look much different than a Walmart parking lot on the plans, but it is using one of their thoroughfare designs to cut through that lot, and it's stubbed out to the adjacent lot. And then, so you have a parking lot that's a public parking lot that serves the Walmart property. And so that would be the workaround, or one option that developers had. And then also if you're looking at, say, the property next to Jingo that you brought up, if Target were to land there, Target is probably not the only commercial space that would land there. These are all hypotheticals, but they're likely that site is large enough to fit multiple commercial buildings, and that would get you into the shared parking factors that are in Article 4, where you could have a shared parking lot. It could still be up in front, but it would be a shared parking lot with multiple uses, but that would have to be separated out into individual lots through a plat process.
Yeah, my point is, you hit it on the head. It's a workaround. We're writing our code. Why would we write a code that has to have workarounds for something we want and we could have more control of, if we do it that way? I mean, just other little examples. The maximum width of a large retail building is 300 feet. A Target building is 378 feet across the front of it. It's just little things like that just, I happen to do this every day, so I'd pick up little stuff like that. But again, it's just my opinion. I think it'd be good to have some type of SP or, PD zone, but, again, it's whatever the group feels is appropriate.
Sure.
In that instance, are we protracting out the process by not including sort of a versus having multiple meetings for variances, and it seems very inefficient if we don't maybe use the time now to write the code the right way to give us the opportunity to better plan. seems very restrictive right now, and it would just be more work on us further down the line for multiple hearings.
Madam Chair,
Ma'am.
when you go into Walmart and then there's that big piece of property over there that we're all hoping a Target or something goes into, but if it used that entrance, does that mess with your code if you want it up in the front?
I think if it's existing, there's not, an issue. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if you put something big besides the Walmart and they use the Walmart road to come out, that's not necessarily sitting on the front. Does that affect your code?
The road that Walmart is, so whenever you come down Adele at the stop sign, that's Hopgood. That is a city street. So that would be the road that they would have to front.
But Hopgood doesn't go this way, does it?
Yes, it goes across the front of Walmart, and that's what's stubbed
okay.
out to both sides of that property. Mr. Pape, what kind of suggestions might you have for commercial special districts?
I don't know that I would do them special districts. I would just add the ability to do like a PD district. And again, we could set thresholds, just like we did for the public participation plan, where we literally say it has to be a minimum of however many acres. It has to be whatever in order to even qualify to ask for a PD zoning. I just think having that tool in the toolbox for unique situations is a good thing. I think the code is doing what we all want it to do. We want it to be pretty restrictive. So I think, I think just having that extra tool in our toolbox with some restrictions on when we can use it is just a good thing for unique projects or unique things that may not fit in the code, but we all look at each other and say, this is a good thing for Fairview. That's just, so that would be my recommendation. I think TPUDC should have, I'm 95% sure they've added it into other codes they've done, having that ability for the PD zone. I know they don't like it because in their mind, that means that their code isn't quite good enough and people can work around it. But in my opinion, you can never think of every possibility when you're writing this code, and that just gives that additional flexibility, is just my thoughts on that. So.
Is the PD for commercial only?
No, you could do it for a big subdivision or especially mixed use, like city center. I don't know how the city center project would fit into this. I didn't really think about that, but that obviously was done as a PD, POD zoning.
That would be CD4.
It would be, it's most closely related to CD4.
Right. I know where it would fit, but I just don't know, could they duplicate that project exactly the way it exists today with this code? I don't think so.
Correct.
So that would give the flexibility for a big mixed-use project, or, if somebody did want to, if they had a big residential property and they wanted to cluster a bunch of lots together, it just gives that flexibility. But again, I would definitely keep it to larger projects and set them some thresholds. Yeah.
And I think that's some of the issues that we've had with PUDs or pods or whatever in the past, right? So especially with a situation where we had 10 acres and they put, an apartment on, a half acre, right? It still fits within that PUD or pod. And we say, okay, you can do that. And then they put, a 15 unit or whatever. So how do we build that PD so that doesn't happen? If they have, let's say, 10 acres, and normally they would, put one house per acre, they put in a 1 acre, they put a 10-unit townhome.
As part of the PD approval, they would have to submit the requirements they're looking for. They would have to submit density. Like I said, I think TPUDC would be able to put together a draft of what's required, but you literally have to, you create your own zoning district, and they would do that, and then it would be locked in. They just like any of the PDs we have now, the zoning's in place, and then when they bring a master plan in, it has to match those standards. Density is one of them, and then we would have the choice. If somebody came in and said, I want 10 units to the acre, we could say, no, we're not going to give you a PD unless you drop it to 5 units to the acre. So they're basically writing the standards, presenting it to us. We make a recommendation to the BOC, and we decide either, yes, this works, or no, it doesn't, or we want to make comments to it and modify it. But you basically then have a zoning in place, just like we do, there's PUDs and PODs all over our city right now, and they can only develop to the standards that were put in that PD. If they come in on those existing PUDs right now, if they come in with something that doesn't match it, then it becomes a major change, and then they have to go to the new code at that point if they want to be grandfathered in. So it's up to us, both staff and all of the boards that it would go through, to make sure we feel that those regulations are stringent enough to hold them to not be able to do something else.
What about a minimum like square footage requirement as it pertains to commercial? So you could say like anything over 300,000 square feet is obviously going to be a really big project and would need more special consideration than like the Ace Hardware down the street, for example. I don't know if 300,000 is the right number. It's just something that's probably a target.
From my perspective, I think it should probably be limited to commercial only. I think CD4 hits mixed use pretty well.
Yeah, that's fine.
And even at that, if it's just a CD, it would have to be a CD4 or CD4C to be able to do commercial, and allow that if it's a sole commercial project or multi-tenant or whatever. But I think that would probably be the best use for it. I think going through everything, we've really nailed through CD4 pretty intently. That's been a big ask from several folks in the development community to have multi-uses within developments, have single families, have townhomes, have a little bit of commercial space, and be able to intertwine all of that together. It's kind of the intent behind a PUD. The reason we pulled PUDs out of this document, from our staff standpoint, it has never really benefited the city. They've been very one-sided from, historically speaking. PUDs inherently in our current zoning allow for the developer to reduce lot sizes by 50%. That is a permitted right with a PUD. And so developers have come in, got twice as many lots as they thought they could have got with straight zoning, and then the city hadn't really benefited other than they have twice as many new homes being built. So we pulled that out, tried to take all the good things out of PUDs that we've seen, from road improvements, traffic studies, mixed uses, on-street parking, different pieces that are incorporated in most of the PUDs, and incorporate those into CD4 to make sure that we're trying to get all the best pieces out of it so that the city doesn't get left behind.
Madam Chair, I think you're right, Ethan. The more I think about it, I think the residential side is covered pretty well. So I think that does make sense, is maybe it can only apply, to commercial, which would essentially be, the CD4W. Just to address what you said about PUDs and how they've been one-sided, that's shame on us, because we don't have to approve a PUD. It may say that they can ask for twice the density, but all you have to do is say, no, it's a rezoning. And that's shame on us for letting that happen as much as we did. So that's, we had control over that. I disagree that the way our ordinance is written right now, that we have to approve PUDs that way. It's just not the case, because it's a rezoning and there's flexibility to say no and ask for different things. So, but I agree with the commercial only.
You're taking too much of a breath. I just wanted to ask, like, with this project that's going on over here, we've already approved them, but do we have control of what goes in there?
What was your question, Ms. Schilling?
The project that's going on there that's supposed to be like the shopping center and the houses, do we have any control over what goes into those?
You mean commercially, like which
Commercially.
retailers go in there?
No, we do not. That is a private developer who's developing that project.
I feel like we need to get something so that we can stop getting pizza places and taco places. If he just does that again, that's just a waste of land that we just put there. Is it, so if it's brought, I mean, that's what happened to with the, I can't think of a stupider thing to put in the storage place. You know, that had that big parking lot there that's just wasted. But if we have a say in what comes here, why can't we have a say what businesses they put up?
Madam Chair.
Sir?
At the end of the day, we can, like, we have, like, our economic development officer can go out and seek meetings, and BOC members, or anyone for that matter, can try to sell Fairview to somebody to convince them that we're worth their investment. But at the end of the day, the reason we keep getting pizza places is because people keep buying pizza. I mean, the market's supporting it.
They can't
People aren't
possibly
opening
be
pizza
using that
places because they're
many.
not going to go, but that's why they're open. They're making money. At the end of the day, you can't tell somebody, we don't want you, because that's discrimination. You couldn't do that.
But we don't think it benefits our town. That's what we're doing with all the houses and stuff. If it doesn't benefit our codes, then we don't have to take it.
You don't have to take the building design that they want to do, but you can't, as long as it's not like a strip club or something that's going to go against a specific
Do we have something in the
regulation
code
or
book for that?
code.
Yes, we do.
I didn't.
So that brings up a great point.
Good zone for a restaurant, though. You can't
Decide which.
It's a
decide
private-
which restaurant goes there. That would
It's
be
a
discrimination, and you get sued
privately
into the ground.
owned development, so we can't, they're just trying to make their rent, and they're gonna get whoever's willing to pay rent, which is most likely a pizza place, unfortunately.
And that you bring up a good point about principal uses of what can be done on land. We did hear the community pretty loud whenever the former Food Lion dirt cheap building turned into a storage unit. We did ultimately change the self-storage principal use to only be able to be allowed within industrial. So that commercial land will not be being sought by developers to build self-storage. At the point that that building changed, we also had a private developer who submitted a self-storage place down in front of Walmart. Those happened to be about the same time, if I remember correctly, but our community spoke pretty loud and clear that they did not want to see self-storage within commercial and wanted to retain commercial property for commercial uses, and didn't feel that that would be a appropriate commercial use. So we did change that. It's on page 4, 137 if you're looking at it, but it is only permitted within light industrial for self-storage.
Madam Chair, one thing I just thought of, the closest thing I've seen to what you're hoping to do, dealing with it in Thompson Station right now, is in the use table. So again, like Chris said, you can't, if you allow a restaurant, you can't tell them which restaurant, that gets into discrimination. But what they did is they said, okay, automotive uses, we don't want a gas station, all over the place. So they said within the commercial zoning districts, it's one of the additional things after the use table, where for automotive uses, you can only have one within, or two within 3,000 feet, lineal feet of a roadway. And so at least then you're kind of starting to limit the number of businesses along a roadway. I mean, and that has been deemed legal and is in their code and some others. So that's the closest I've seen to doing that. I had that as a note, like, do we want to do that? We've got like 7 or 8 gas stations in town already, automotive uses, different things like that. And when they define it, automotive uses are gas stations, car washes, oil change, that kind of stuff, tire places, so that at least they're not all stacked up and they get spread out a little bit. You know, that's one possibility.
Madam Chair,
Sir?
going back to Jeff's PD, did we mark that down? I like the commercial portion of that.
I
I
did
think we
mark
need to
that down.
come to a consensus about, okay,
I did mark it down, and I put an acreage of 20 acres.
20, a minimum 20 acres.
Yes, and it'll be on the list. I'm just making notes here to put things on the list, and then y'all can amend it or vote for the list to go to the Board of Commissioners.
Do we feel 20 acre minimum is satisfactory?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think that along with that it's limited to the commercial. Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. And and Ethan, the plan is you'll do this and you'll draft kind of what's going to be added in. So we'll get that ahead of the next meeting and we'll have time to kind of look at it and we can email you with any thoughts if we have any. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And to Mr. Pape's point about principal uses, again, back on page 4, 137, there is motor vehicle related uses, car wash, body shop, vehicle maintenance, repair, service, vehicle sales, vehicle storage, tire sales, towing facilities. There's a couple that are permitted within 4C. There are several that are conditional uses within 4C. There are several that are conditional uses within light industrial, and there are a few that are permitted within light industrial. But they are not permitted, generally speaking, except for tire sales, to be located within most of the commercial space. And none of the motor vehicle related uses are located within CD4, which is the largest area of commercial space in Fairview.
And for those watching from home, just a reminder that this is for future projects. This doesn't affect anything that is existing.
Correct. This does not affect anything that is existing unless a business that currently does one of these uses closes down and their doors are closed for 30 months.
30 months.
Correct. Or they
Or they
change
change
use, then they would have to come into conformance with this code.
Good to know. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair. So as it relates to the different businesses we've been talking about, automotive and other, one thing that I would really like to see, and maybe, there's some verbiage to this, if there is a U-Haul, car sales, auto repair, I would like to see all of the vehicles behind the building.
That is a requirement. Everything has to be within the third layer of the lot.
Because there's nothing worse than people coming off the interstate, nothing against the, specialized truck repair or whatever, but all those vehicles out there, and then also, U-Hauls all across the front on the street.
Again, both of those businesses, those would have to be closed for 30 months.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate, but
to-
I get it.
Otherwise, Kevin, do you have any input on that? The question was, is that a state regulation?
Yes, that is a state regulation. It's
30
TCA.
months?
It's TCA 137208. If a commercial business is a non-conforming business, meaning it was conforming, the zoning ordinance has changed, something of that nature. If it is closed down for 29 months and 29 days, someone can start it back up. They have legal protection from state law to start that business back up. If it goes for 30 months and 1 day, therefore that use is no longer available on that piece of property.
So they would be able to have the vehicles or whatever the case may be in the front as it was before?
Correct. If it was approved, in this case, if it was approved under our current ordinance, this ordinance gets adopted, then they automatically have that protection from state law.
Now, what if this place was some sort of use and they just decided to bring in U-Haul and they put U-Hauls across the front?
an existing business or a new one that falls
Well,
into the
but
new?
how, like, it's existing, obviously, but I mean, they didn't sign up for U-Hauls. They're a car repair place. So
Today, we
they
do
decide
not,
to put U-Hauls up front. I mean, can we not make them put the U-Hauls in the back of the building?
today, we do not have any regulations that require that.
But once this is adopted, I guess it
New
would,
businesses,
But they're not a U-Haul business. They're a car repair place. So can we require them to put the U-Hauls in the back of the building because they didn't sign up with us as U-Haul? They've been getting away with it.
Theoretical company.
Well, first, yeah, but getting away with it and it being appropriate is not. So
we have nothing today that requires their parking to be behind
as
the
soon as
building.
this is approved, then we can ask them, we can tell them that the U-Hauls have to be at the back of the building.
their zoning would still be the old zoning,
It's
right?
for an automotive repair place. It's not for U-Hauls.
Their zoning is commercial today, and that's a commercial business. Yes.
Well, they're a commercial auto repair. They're not a U-Haul business. So can we require the U-Hauls
No,
to be at the
we
back of the
cannot,
building?
Unless they close down business for
See, I don't
30
understand.
months.
I just don't understand that. We never approved for, that's not the business they're in. They're in the automotive repair business, not the U-Haul business. They just decided to start renting U-Hauls, and now they're ugly and in front of the business all on the road.
Theoretically.
No, they are. There's no theoretical. It's on Cardinal Lane and Highway 100.
My best answer to you for that tonight is no, we cannot. However,
But we need to
can-
check
we
with
can
Patrick
seek
on
with
that.
Mr. Carter.
Okay.
And get a legal determination on that.
So a car dealership can keep adding things on that you haven't approved them to be? I'm saying like this car dealership, wherever this, which is never, no, I'm not gonna say anything, but anyway, what if they decided they want to be a paint place too? Because now they fix the vehicles, but what if they decide they want to be painting and too? Wouldn't they have to get approval from us to be a painting place too?
I don't think so because they have a commercial zoning and a commercial license,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter what they what they do.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Is that right, Ethan?
Speaking them.
Very vague, so that it's probably,
Yes. The commercial zoning right now is pretty vague.
Yeah, I
So-
believe that falls under general business, if I recall correctly.
Madam Chair.
Ma'am?
So we can have a business that opens up that sells vehicles, and then they can add barns that they're going to sell, and then they can add other, and just keep adding whatever they want to add, and we have no say over what's going to be lining the street.
I think that is accurate.
And that's what's happening. So we're in the new code. I mean, I don't understand how they're getting to do that to begin with. If they, I mean,
Currently, our commercial regulations permit what every business in Fairview is doing today. The only way that they have to conform with this code is if they change their use, which all of the uses are broken down in here. They're all defined uses. If they change their use, or if they are closed for 30 months and a day. And then they would have to come into conformance with this. If it is a new business, they have to be in conformance with this.
So if
so, go ahead.
their primary, still hypothetically, if their primary use is an automotive shop, do they have to give any kind of proof that their primary majority use is automotive, even if they add sales of barns to their repertoire. That makes sense? We don't require them to maintain primary use of X, Y, and Z that they were zoned for originally. Now we're getting off on a
We are.
tangent here.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I just want to continue with my,
Sure.
so my concern, because we're spending a lot of time with our new code to make Fairview as beautiful, aesthetically pleasing to our community as we can.
Understood.
If now, so I just want to understand correctly, if someone has a commercial piece of property, they can just do whatever they want to do. That's what I'm hearing. Well, I'm an automotive shop, but then I'm going to add this and this and this, and we can't do a thing about it. So every piece of commercial property along Fairview Boulevard, Highway 100, they can just not ask, they can just put whatever they want out there, whether it's unattractive and makes Fairview look junky or not.
If it's permitted by right, I would say yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I mean, my thoughts on this is we definitely need legal to weigh in. I don't know that we're going to get an answer tonight, but my thought is, so let's look at it this way for a second. Right now, their zoning is X, and they probably don't have a PUD. So that zoning, if it's general business now, will be converted to CD4. And if they're operating a business right now, there's all kinds of stuff in here about outdoor display and outdoor sales that has to be, approved through conditional uses and different things and has to be shown on a site plan. That's probably the question for legal. They're operating a use right now, but they're not having outdoor sales and display. So if they decide to suddenly have outdoor display after the new code in place, I would think we could regulate that. Because they are now under the CD4 zoning, or CD4C is what they're going to end up being, probably 4, I guess. So if they're not currently doing outdoor display, I think we should be able to do that. Now, the ones that do have the trucks out front, we're probably stuck because they're doing that, when the zoning ordinance changes, and we can't make them go back and change that. But that's, I don't know, Ethan, does that make sense?
That is a great interpretation.
Ethan, when this is adopted, formally adopted, are you saying that the, commercial, the CMCU those owners won't be grandfathered into keeping their existing zoning
No,
till someone rezones?
no. They will fall within the zoning map. That is the last page in your document that lists what every single property in the municipal boundary is Fairview. They will be listed as one of those districts,
Got it.
as it's shown on this map.
Sir?
They will be non-conforming, yes.
Is there any relevance to a commercial business license, what that application for their business license is versus what they're using the property for?
And business licenses are regulated by the state?
That's correct, and that's outside of our planning and codes department. We are way outside of this code.
It seems weird that HOA has more ability to beautify their streets than the city of Fairview.
It sounds like once this is formally adopted, there's probably some loopholes.
There's not many. We tried to close up as many as we could.
I mean, to our benefit of picking out
The
U-Hauls.
you mentioned HOAs as an example, that they have the HOA controls ultimately the property owner's rights within that development. Here, these are establishing the property owner's rights. We do not control their rights. They have rights. And so there's a slight difference in how an HOA can manage versus how a municipal government can manage.
Madam Chair, one more thing, and then I'm
Ma'am.
done with this topic. So recently I noticed that there was a car dealership that closed down. So who keeps the counter on 30 months?
We were notified in that case. They have the same owner is looking to continue. I believe they're just looking for a leasee of that property.
To do another car dealership?
Something along those lines, yes.
And moving forward, not that one, moving forward, vehicles being serviced, U-Hauls, any of that nature, truck repair, whatever, all the vehicles will be required to be behind the building.
Correct. Everything would have to be automotive storage, outdoor storage. All of those items are within the third layer of the lot, which is behind the building.
Madam Chair?
Sir?
The item I wanted to talk about, Ethan, we've talked about it a little bit offline, is the ridge tops and hilltops. The intent of it, I think since Fairview doesn't have like that iconic ridge top at that specific elevation, and the elevation changes throughout the community, it just seems like in all the conversations I've had with people, it's going to be more problematic and a headache on staff than anything. That last time we talked about it. So I guess just trying to get everybody's idea if it's necessary with the conditions of Fairview to have that in there.
Is that property that's for sale up adjacent or parallel to the hill is that within Fairview?
Yeah, it is.
I would consider that a ridge top, right? Maybe that's our only one.
And that's the second half of that is like if it is deemed necessary, it's probably very select few areas that it would be applicable. The way it's currently written is I think the way it's currently written, Cumberland Estates couldn't exist, correct? Which I don't think anybody would say that's
Part
on
of
that hill.
Cumberland Estates could not exist, yes.
Madam Chair,
Ma'am?
on the same item as Vice Mayor McDonald, I agree, we need to relook at that because, I mean, the way the terrain of Fairview, there's a lot of neighborhoods that wouldn't exist right now if we follow
Ours.
that.
That point, they wouldn't, I guess for anybody listening at home, like the point of like, you think of Chattanooga, you drive through Chattanooga, they have like a bowl, a rim that you can visibly see, right? You don't want that peak being riddled with rooftops. You'd rather have it be trees. Fairview doesn't have like that iconic ridge that you can see from, anywhere.
Is it a minimum elevation change that characterizes that ridge top?
I think it's a floor, right?
The elevation that is in the final draft is 875, 775. Let me find it and I'll tell you.
875 sounds right.
So it's anything that reaches 875
Anything
feet?
over that would be a no. I believe if it is 875, there's areas.
In my house.
Like your house.
I wasn't
might
gonna
sit
say
real
that.
close.
No, mine's like
What's that?
1,000
Your
feet.
house might be above that elevation.
Like we're down in the bottom.
She's near sea level.
Kind of the point of the whole thing. Like some areas, your ridge might be 750 feet. In other areas, the ridge is set it at a flat thing, then
Sir?
I think we talked a little bit about this after the last session. Is there anything in the 2040 plan that requires us, or in encourages us to preserve hilltops for any specific actual reason.
I don't recall hilltops, but trees, for sure.
Trees are in there, hilltops and ridgetops are not specifically called out. The stormwater ordinance does speak to steep slopes, which is part of this same conversation. The elevation was listed at 875 feet. For everything over 875 could be declared a hilltop or a ridgetop. The piece that you're speaking of, Ms. Schulis, going out of town right at the top of Whippoorwill Hill,
Yes.
the highest elevation on that property is 830 feet, based on Williamson County GIS. Whereas Cumberland Drive, right there at the entrance of Cumberland Estates, is 905 feet.
Really?
What's that?
So our
I am.
I'm not going to look up. I can show you later.
Sure.
But since
Fair
this
enough.
is being streamed live, I'm not going to show you.
Probably nice of you.
But so we vary quite a bit across, and we as staff discussed this with TPUDC about hilltops and ridgetops, and the intent behind it is exactly as Vice Mayor McDonald spoke about, is protecting the kind of surrounding properties overlooking the city. You know, Franklin has some ridgetops. There are a few homes that are built up on ridgetops that overlook downtown. Nolensville has some very small spaces within their community. They're relatively flat communities. Out here, we have a lot of rolling hills. We sit up on top of a big rock. And I don't, from our perspective as staff, I think hilltops and ridgetops would be very hard to administer. We have homes that are built. We have whole subdivisions that are built above that 875 number. We decided as staff to leave it up to Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners. We left it in here. We wanted y'all to have the discussion. If you wanted to pull it out, we're happy to accommodate that request. If you want to leave it in and amend it, we're happy to accommodate that request as well. But we didn't feel that that was our place to completely remove it and not at least present it.
Is there
Sure.
is there anything, thought exercise, if we removed it, does that expose us, or does that leave a gap on any other
Was there a specific development in mind when this was developed, when this language was?
The hilltops and ridgetops language is a standard piece that TPUDC places in every document. It's in Nolensville, it's in Franklin, it's in Columbia.
Yeah.
Every ordinance that they've written, I believe, has it in there unless it's been amended out.
Yeah, and with the requirements being that 80% of everything above that 875 be open space, most of our neighborhoods wouldn't be here today, so I think we should remove this. Hilltops and ridgetops. Well, ridgetops is 50% and hilltops is 80%.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
Ethan, is there a compromise that it stays in as a tool for you guys to use as staff, but you can designate when it's a hilltop or ridgetop based on, a certain amount of vertical difference over, let's say there's a 100-foot climb up to a peak or something, instead of setting an elevation. If there is a location like that property heading out of town to the east there, I mean, that is a beautiful ridgetop there. I'd hate to see somebody come in and, tear that apart. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud, but if, do you leave it in and give you guys as staff flexibility on saying this, and maybe it's not even giving flexibility, it's setting certain standards, where, yeah, the peak of the hilltop is no more than 100 feet wide or something, and it's got a certain vertical fall of over 200 feet or something like that, where instead of an elevation, you're setting standards like that. Just, just something to think about. Or we could just take it out completely.
Madam Chair, I think my concern about removing it or having the appearance of bias if it comes up in a development where we just don't like the way it looks because it's on a hilltop and it's now they have the high ground but there's nothing to back up why we as a planning commission would reject it or have a problem with it. And also looking at from a public safety of, cell phone towers or any kind of pseudo commercial property that maybe would have a benefit to the community, but maybe would be an aeronautical threat or something. I think there should be something in there that would then force us to dig in and really justify what our decisions are.
Yes, correct. Those do have to get approved through a BOZA hearing for those. And one of the things, looking at Williamson County and kind of how they address hilltops and ridgetops, our definition is slightly different than how they have it. Just for clarification for everyone, a ridgetop, the definition that we have in our document is the part of a ridge which at any point is over 875 feet in elevation, as shown on the U.S. Geological Survey's 7.5-minute quadrangle sheets covering the city, where the average slope is less than 5% within an area of 10 acres or more, and where the minimum width is 400 feet. The county has it as hilltops and ridgetops are areas of land with a slope less than 15%, located directly above moderately steep and or very steep sloped areas. And so we could alter our definition to include to raise the elevation, to change the percentage, to change the acreage. We could alter any of those items, or we could remove it. I don't think that it benefits us as a community, looking at how we have developed over the last, what is that, 70 years, close to it, 65 years. So I think that there's a real conversation to be had about removing it and if it is right to have it within the city of Fairview.
Do you feel like it would put more of an administrative burden on staff to continually have to discuss it if we left it in, for future projects, having to go explain it away? And
it restricts a fair bit of property within the city. It currently is not restricted, but it also still protects steep slopes because we have that slope protection item on the previous sheet that covers slopes. Whereas hilltops and ridgetops, we get into a lot of resource management pieces in here where we're protecting trees, and a certain amount of trees has to be preserved on the site. I think we can
I think we can
address that.
We can leave this, item A, steep slopes in, but remove items B and C, hilltops and ridgetops, or just on
That would be a
Hilltops and
good
ridgetops.
recommendation.
It's on
612.
6-12.
Would it be, I was thinking about that earlier, do you think TUPDC could put page numbers, add page numbers to this?
So we have addressed that with them, and the formatting software that they utilize only allows one form of page numbering. My preference is to have the page number in the top corner with that format. Ultimately, when this goes and is completely adopted, it will be in a flipbook version online. And so everything will be clickable and searchable and just type your word in and it takes you to the place you want to go to.
Right.
And so that was why we left off. We can add page numbers, but their system allows one or the other.
Sure.
And
It just
so-
for these purposes, it's just easier to.
So we are leaning towards removing B and C, is that? I have another question unrelated to this topic, if we're done talking about
Are we all in agreement about removing it? Okay. Removed.
that. Mine has to do with the map, in the very back. One that just jumped off the page, you're probably aware of which one it is. That particular parcel has been requested to be rezoned a handful of times. I think I've been a part of it 3 times. And they've always, one, they've always been told no. 2, every single time it's come up for vote, this building's full and it gets the community, like the community obviously doesn't want that density over there. So for me, I think, having that CD4C is the only, all out by Highway 40 interchange and then throwing one in the middle of town. I know that there's potentially some other variables in play with that piece, but for me, and I'd like to get everyone else's opinion, I think for that location, CD3 is probably the densest I would like to see it. Allows for commercial, and that's 6 units per acre versus 16.
CD4 is
I'm
what
sorry.
you're speaking. So I'll give you a little background on that. That originally came out as a CD4, and the property owner came and met with us using the matrix that we put out publicly. It is currently zoned today commercial general. So if you look down here, CI commercial general and C1 through 7 shows it translating to CD4C, and that was the request of the property owner, and that was the reason that map was changed. I believe you're speaking about the property
This is
next
the
to
large
Jingo
piece
Market.
next to Jingo, yeah. It's if you look at your map, it's the only piece outside of the Highway 40 corridor that has a CD4C. It's the purple block in bottom of the map there.
I agree. For consistency, for congestion, for everything, I agree.
So proposing to change it from CDCV to CD4C.
From CD4C to just CD4. Which allows for I think everything's pretty much the exact same. It just reduces the density from 16,
Correct.
which blends with the existing community over there a lot more. It's still probably higher density than most of them are going to be happy with, but it's better than 16 at this point. And I think that's still a fair to the current property owner as well. I don't think it's changing, allowing for the commercial that they currently have.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
if nobody had any more comments on that, while we're on the map and talking about that, we've got the CD4C out by 40, but we also have 840, and there's nothing over there. Right now, no commercial's going to land there. But again, this code is for 15, 20, 25 years out. Was there any consideration for putting some CD4C near 840? At some point, that could be a viable commercial.
I agree. That could be viable commercial, and our staff's position on that was to leave it as CD2 rural at this point, and then once commercial is interested in that, at that point, they would come in and ask for rezoning, and it would be up to the Board of Commissioners if they were to get a rezoning for that property. That way it wasn't just anything could go there. Ultimately, the Planning Commission and the BOC would have some input on what ends up down there at that intersection.
I can't remember, what does the 2040 plan designate that area as commercial?
Business Interchange District.
Okay, that makes sense, thanks.
Madam Chair, does that fall into like the whole gas station thing? Are we going to put how many things can, with the gas stations or the automotive vehicles, how far they have to be apart? Because you have a gas station there, I certainly don't want another gas station right there.
So with how this code is laid out and back to the principal uses, I've harped on this for a year now, but the principal uses is a big piece for me to make sure that we get correct. And those uses that involve automotive uses and motor vehicle related uses are primarily, there's only one that is not, that's allowed outside of light industrial. And that's tire sales, and it's allowed within CD4C, which is primarily around the I-40 interchange. But as far as gas stations, those have been classified as light industrial. And so the only industrial area that we have currently is the industrial park, and then the property where Wilson Lumber sits. And then we have recently rezoned one industrial property out on close to Brush Creek for Laystar, yes. And so the industrial property that's available is essentially nothing. So if they wanted to put a gas station in, they would have to rezone. Ultimately, the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners would get their say on if they rezoned or did not.
Madam Chair,
Sure.
I had a question. How does a Planning and Zoning Commission get appointed? What is the process?
From the, like, how do all of you get your seats?
If we had a vacancy, how does
If you have a vacancy, then the Board of Commissioners would appoint. We would advertise it,
right?
receive applications. The board would evaluate those applications.
Is that pretty much the same for all boards?
Yes.
Under the appointment of Historic Zoning Commission,
Can you give us a page?
yeah, Article 338,
338.
3-8, Article 3. Under C. Members of the Historic Zoning Commission shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the Board of Commissioners. Is that consistent just with all of our other boards? And if not, could we make that consistent?
Can you give me the page number at the top corner?
3-8,
Yeah, 3-8,
3-8.
Article 3,
3-8, halfway down the page on the left side.
C, appointment to the Historic Zoning Commission.
We don't have,
We currently do not have a historic zoning
I
commission.
think that's right. With this, we would create that, right? My question is, why are we kind of going outside of how we normally appoint people to boards? Could we make that consistent throughout the appointment of board members?
Madam Chair,
Sir.
that is consistent with state law. That is a specific requirement in state law for establishment of historic zoning commissions. That's how they are to be appointed.
So
That's the reason it's written that way.
we are supposed to have a historic.
No, you don't have to have one, but if you appoint one, being appointed by the mayor and affirmed by your legislative body is how it is required by state law.
Maybe we could just add where applicable or if applicable.
Yeah, I think that's already covered because I asked at the beginning, like, we don't have one now, and it's just if you decide to create one. So I think it's pretty much already in there that like we don't need it, but if the Board of Commissioners decides they want to create a historic commission, then you follow the state law at that point.
And a lot of the pieces of that were pulled out of our current ordinance. We have the same layout today within our existing zoning ordinance for historic commission. It has never been formed.
And the more I think about it, I think what it is the first step would be the Board of Commissioners or the staff somebody would start the process to say, we want to do a historic overlay district, and we designate certain areas in a historic overlay district. And if we did that, then we would have to form a
We
historic
would first
commission.
need historic buildings.
Because they're like quasi BOZA, right? Like they have to approve changes if you're gonna.
Add something
Sign.
to a home and,
if
all
if
sorts
you
of
want to
stuff.
paint your
yeah.
house or all that. Yeah.
We would first need historic items.
That's
What,
some
what
history.
constitutes a historic?
Kevin, you
Over
want to
100,
speak a
does it
little
have
bit
to
on
be
that?
over 100 years old?
No, that is not right. So if you're talking about a local historic district, this is what this would be, if you were to establish a historic zoning commission, each community could set up your standard. Most communities will follow the National Park Service standard, which is at least 50 years old. There's some other general requirements. Was it built by a master builder, architect? What level of significance? Is it local significance, state, national? There's other standards that you could use, but each community, when you create a local historic commission, you have the ability to set your own standards for that.
Sure. Vice Mayor, did you want to continue on with your thought? You were going down a path earlier, and I don't know that we.
I think we
Said one-
wrapped it up. That was just the
Were there any additional map questions?
that was the one that jumped off at me.
Are we all in agreement about changing that? I guess I don't know that we came to a final agreement on changing the zoning.
It's there.
And we will be updating. There are a couple properties that I know there's one off of Old Franklin that we annexed into the city that's not reflected on this map that I caught today, actually. So there are a couple little minor tweaks that you'll get sent over with a revision.
Madam Chair,
Mayor?
can we, since that's kind of a property in the center of town and people are very interested in that, can we explain what property and what Vice Mayor McDonald is talking about changing it from this to that, just so the public can understand?
The property sits between Cumberland Drive and Glen Haven. It is a large open field. It has been commonly referred to as the Bark East property. It's had several different developments come in on that, several different rezonings that have either been deferred indefinitely or denied over the years. That property, again, the matrix that we put out showed commercial general going to CD4C. The property owner requested that. When the public draft came out that their property had been improperly changed, utilizing our matrix that we put out, and so
What did you have it zoned at prior to them requesting it?
CD4. What you are moving it back to, correct?
And that is consistent with the matrix.
There's the matrix. So commercial general translation, and it's not all of these are exact perfect sciences, but Commercial general did show it going to neighborhood corridor, CD4C. And that was the document that was referenced by we put it out as a public document, and I don't fault them for referencing it as, hey, this is what I thought my property was going to get on the map.
Understood.
The largest essential difference between CD4C and CD4, CD4 permits 6 units per acre density. CD4C permits 16 units per acre density. Everything else is essentially the same. They both permit single-family homes, commercial, townhomes, flex spaces, small multifamily, large multifamily. They all permit pretty much the same thing. Just
So no apartments,
there are multifamily opportunities within this.
but only 6 units.
The density of the property cannot be more than 6 units or 6 units per acre with CD4. That doesn't mean the building can't be more than 6 units. The building can be more than 6.
Just for visualization, if it was 100 acres, not necessarily this one.
This
let's
one,
just
that's
say-
52.
Let's just say, for round numbers, 100 acres. CD4C, you would get 1,600 units on that property. CD4, you would get 600, 1,000 less. On that, divided by
Correct.
half, roughly.
Correct. I think that is a key point to mention. I know that we've been digging through this, and a lot of us have read through it multiple times. Some of the public have not necessarily read through it. And so a big piece to mention is one of the largest wholesale changes between this document and our current zoning ordinance. Our current zoning ordinance has minimum lot sizes that drive kind of every aspects of zoning. You know, we talk a lot about RS or R20 or RS40, 40,000 square foot lot, 20,000 square foot lot. This code has a minimum lot width, and it has a density that has to be met. It does not have a minimum lot size for most of the building types. And so when we look at it from a density perspective, and we've been trying to steer the conversation that way at the Planning Commission from our staff level as we're discussing different projects up here, you may not have noticed, but we've been trying to prep you for this conversation. As Vice Mayor McDonald spoke about, 100 acres, they only have to meet the minimum lot width. Say they're building with CD3 that permits 4 homes per acre. They may build 4 homes per acre, but only use 50 acres and leave 50 acres open space because it may be steep slopes or challenging topography that they don't want to touch. But they can get, if they can meet the minimum lot width of each lot, they can get their full density on that 50 acres. So in a case of CD3 on a 100-acre parcel, they could build 400 homes on 50 acres if they're able to meet the lot width and streets and all the other requirements in here. I don't see that necessarily happening because there's a lot of requirements that make that very challenging to get full density on any project. I know a lot of developers come and speak to y'all, and they're always, well, it's R20, but we're actually building larger lots, or it's less dense than what we could be. Those conversations are going to be very prevalent in the future, but the ultimate piece of that is really caring about the density and how that looks. So if you look at like CD2 has 1 home per 3 acres, but that's a density calculation. That does not mean the lot has to be 3 acres big. It's a density calculation. CD 3L is 2 homes per acre. Does not mean the lot has to be half an acre big. It just means that if you have 100 acres at CD 3L, you can build 200 homes as a maximum home count. So just, it's a little bit of a shift in how we're looking at things and how things are moving as far as development goes. This code doesn't necessarily take into account how large the lot is. The market will drive a lot of that with how large lots are. It does take into account how a pedestrian interacts with walking through a neighborhood, walking through a community, and how their scenery changes and what streetscapes there are, and if there's parking on the street, if their garage is behind the home, if they're alley accessed. There's a lot of different intricate pieces, all to make the pedestrian experience the best that it can be, while not hurting the vehicular experience, along with building a beautiful product. So just kind of making sure that we're all on the same page as we're reading it, and it's going to be a little bit of a transition of how we have traditionally viewed zoning and traditionally viewed lot sizes within our community.
Madam Chair.
Sure.
So in regards to the property that Vice Mayor was talking about, is there any potential negative financial impact to the owner of that property by rezoning it? Right, because if they wanted it rezoned to 4C, and they were potentially thinking about selling it in the future to a developer, and then we vote to reduce that, that could have an impact on that landowner. Just curious.
Kevin, I'm sorry, Mr. Chastain, if you could maybe speak to the best and highest use. Correct.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that already had gone through or not.
No, this is, so whenever we vote to adopt this, Article 2 is about the zoning map, and this is the zoning map that would be adopted with this document. So it'll be a wholesale adoption of the document and the zoning map. Today, that property is zoned commercial general. But Mr. Chastain, if you'd speak to highest and best use.
Yeah, it's just something that I've told to Ethan and Curtis as we've been in meetings. To your question, without a doubt, I mean, we look at the example Commissioner McDonald spoke of. I mean, you just look at the density numbers. Obviously, there would be a financial impact. However, it's been consistent. I'm not an attorney, but just reading court cases, it's been consistent that an owner of property is not guaranteed the highest and best use of their property. Regulations can be placed on property as long as it's obviously been adopted correctly and due process is met and other legal requirements. So, yes, there would be a financial impact. However, at the same time, there's not a guarantee that someone can have the highest and best use of their property, get the largest return.
Those in the room that work in this industry, I think too, it would be pretty easy to argue that going from what they are currently zoned to CD4 in itself is adding value to that property, because as it sits now, residential is not allowed on it, and this would allow for residential. So is it less valuable than CD4C? In theory, but CD4 is more valuable than its current zoning, so I don't think the argument could be made that we're hurting his pocket. And for the record, I think he has commercial available now, and he has commercial available in the future, so That's my reasoning for wanting to see that. I don't think we need to maximize the residential piece when it doesn't currently allow for residential of any size.
Ethan, when this is formally adopted, will the Fairview 2040 be updated to reference or reflect any of these changes?
That is a great question. So our 2040 plan, give me just 1 second. So our intention as staff is to go through and update the appropriate zonings and how those are listed to match the matrix and how those things have translated over and how we utilize that. The development character and appropriate land uses that are listed on these within the 2040 plan is what was used to create this whole document for development character, a character-based code, and the appropriate land uses match, the development character matches. The only thing that we would need to change is the appropriate zoning nomenclature.
Got it.
And that would be relatively soon after adoption of this document, and we'll do that in-house with our staff. And then I know several people have asked about a 2040 update. That would be in the coming years in the future, between now and 2030 for a 50% update.
This was developed starting in 2017, but wasn't formally adopted till
2019. Yeah. So it's our 2040 plan. It's supposed to be over a 20-year period. 2030 would be halfway to evaluate kind of where we're at.
Sure.
There are some folks that recommend 5 years, every 5 years going through it and updating it. I think a 10-year mark is probably the healthier place to be. After 5 years, you're still in the planning process of trying to get many of the projects done that are initiated by a comprehensive plan. What other kind of Post-it notes do you have, Mr. Pape?
Only one more that might generate substantial conversation, then one more small one. Alternative septic systems, step systems. That's something that is going to continue to become more prevalent. If Mr. Carter was here, he'd say, I don't want to talk about sewer systems because he's dealing with a lot of that in Spring Hill right now with some challenges. But, we do have an opportunity. TDEC will always regulate how the systems are designed, how they operate, what soils they can go in and that kind of stuff. But in the zoning ordinance, we have every opportunity to say what districts they can be used in, when they can be used. If we want to say, some of these get really, really big. You get into 250, 300 homes and you're talking 25, 30 acres of area for these systems. We have every ability in this zoning ordinance to designate those as a specific use and call it an alternative sewer system. And I think it is already in there. But, we have the ability to set standards and say, you don't necessarily have to say it can't be used over 200 homes, but you could say over 200 homes is a special use permit or a conditional use or something. We can say they have to be placed in certain areas within the districts and that kind of stuff so that they're not right up front. It's just something to think about whether we want to put some standards in here for where they can be used, and if we want to limit how big they are, and relative to that.
To Mr. Pape's point, we heard you fairly loud and clear. We knew that this conversation from our staff would come up. So on page 4-141, there's a principal uses chart that has utility uses. Decentralized wastewater treatment is listed as a permitted use subject to limited use standards. And we can go through those limited use standards if you'd like. But I know that this has been a a large piece, we have some developments. Wynwood Park is one where I think most people who come down Cox Pike would rather not see a decentralized wastewater treatment facility right next to the road, and would love to see it maybe hidden back off the road a little bit. And so that was one of the pieces that I really tried to make sure we had in here to be able to discuss, and where those could be and how those uses are.
Madam Chair,
Sir.
has the conversation with Dixon Water, Sewer, has that conversation talked about what their breaking point is? You know, how much can they actually?
It is not. Kevin, you may be able to assist me in some of this, but there is some legal precedent of what a municipality can and can't do to a independent utility. And so we can, one of the pieces in here that I talked with Water Authority of Dixon County about, changing our fencing standards so that all of their pump stations and everything that has chain link fence all along Highway 100 and all of our roads, as they replace those fences, they'll be updated to meet this code and not have chain link and have, wooden privacy fences or items that protect the visual impact that those things can have. But as far as us controlling them and what they approve and don't approve, we do not have oversight over that.
It'd just be interesting because as they're looking to, expand, they got a business plan, right, to expand their services and carry the load of, people moving out of Nashville and moving further west. At what point is growth in the west aspect of Nashville outgrowing their ability to service those new areas? That's sort of a bigger conversation than what this is entailing, but that goes into your question, Jeff, of, how do we mitigate a breaking point that they can't service certain areas? What can we do about it, from a zoning and septic alternative?
Question, just curious. Other municipalities own their water and sewer. We do not.
Used
Force
to.
that out, right? That Dixon Water Authority handles that. Do we, and I'm all for whatever we can figure out that's gonna be best for the city, but just, again, informational purposes, is, do we have the ability to tell Dixon Water Authority how to provide service to those developments?
Ethan, do you,
My opinion that we don't have the ability to tell them how they can provide service. We do have the ability, and we have put a couple things in here as far as decentralized wastewater treatments require them to be landscaped, fenced,
Right.
screened. They have to provide a buffer around that individual parcel because that ultimately gets split off as its own parcel that Water Authority owns. And so there are a couple protections to make sure that the visual impacts are not there. But ultimately, it's Water Authority of Dixon County and how they're able to provide sewer and water services to these communities, and Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC, ultimately approves if these systems are acceptable to go in those locations.
And Madam Chair, if I may just talk about that, our current ordinance says they can't put a treatment plant except in zoning areas where we say this is a treatment plant. Whether it's serving a small group or a big group, we absolutely can say it can't be in certain districts. That's not telling them how they can or can't provide service. They can figure out a way. They can go buy a piece of property that does have the right soils and put a system on it and then serve it that way. We have every right to say that we just don't want them at all in a zoning district.
That would have to be built into the zoning, though, like the blanket zoning would either be an on or off for decentralized.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about. That's
Yeah,
what
but
we're
it
doing
would
right
have to be
now.
a broad brush, right? Like all of CD3's got to be, or 3D CD3's got to be yes or no, right? You couldn't pick and choose when you want.
Correct, if you're going to do it that way. But when you get into the additional requirements for a decentralized system, you can say, hey, it's permitted in this zone, but you can say, we could add it in here, just like we do with automotive uses or outdoor display. We say it has to be behind the building. We can say it can't be fronting a roadway. We can say it can't be used for more than 200 homes without a special use permit. We can say those things all day long and really get into specifics here if
Right,
we
like
want to.
location of it, all that. Just broad yes or no if you can use it or not, just has to be tailored to this, to the zoning as a whole.
Correct. But then you go to page 4-149, where it gets into the additional standards for decentralized wastewater treatment. And that's where, as Ethan said, they're required to be landscaped, fenced. We've got 2 conditions right now. We could add 3, 4, 5. There's some of them in here that have 15 additional conditions, and we can decide what those are.
There's some restrictions on location just based on the conditions of the soil, right? Like it's not a blank canvas. They're gonna have to test soil and find. I think there would be something there though to say, like whatever approved location is farthest from the roadway or something like that, that you could, so they don't, it might be more beneficial for them to put a few more houses if they put it up front, but you could say like it's got to be in the furthest away approved location or something like that, or acceptable location.
Would you want it from the public right-of-way and adjacent parcels?
Probably best.
Sounds nice. You think?
Smaller developments of like 20 lots or 30 lots may not have options, right? It might just be this is the only place it can go.
Typically,
But with like a,
Typically, a decentralized system won't work until you reach about 50 lots. So less than that, if you see a development in Fairview that's less than 50 lots, they are on conventional sewer. Yes.
Ethan, can you explain for us and then people that are watching from home why we have to use decentralized wastewater treatment facilities and why Dixon Water is our water provider, water and sewer provider?
I can speak to why Water Authority of Dixon County is our water and sewer provider. As far as the specifics on decentralized, I am not an engineer to speak on that.
Sure.
Water Authority would probably be best to speak on that, or my engineering co-part that is out with the flu. And so in 2006, the city of Fairview was struggling to maintain the wastewater treatment plant here, and ultimately it came down to a decision of who was better to maintain it. Water Authority was the best option at that time. Our board chose to turn over control to Water Authority of Dixon County, and they have maintained our water and sewer since that point. And they've made upgrades to their system throughout the years to give better capacity and improve the efficiency of the wastewater treatment facility that we had. And they're a partner of ours, but they are a separate, completely separate entity.
And there is is it a distribution or a pump like right near 40, under 40? So any
There's
developments closer to 40 often have more opportunity for traditional.
Closer down 96 typically have opportunities for conventional sewer just because the main line that pumps to the Dixon County wastewater treatment plant goes under I-40 along Highway 96 into Dixon County.
Which is also why we can't do any commercial at 840 because there's just not.
Sewer only extends today to about Overby Road, and then after that, everyone else is on septic and wells.
Madam Chair, I'll
Sure.
just add just a little commentary to go back to one of Mr. Ritt's point about, you know, with Dixon County Water and Sewer Authority, like where do they kind of run out or whatever? You know, with these alternative systems, one of the state requirements is it has to be operated by, you know, a licensed entity, which they are. And so it's actually a really good business model for them because the developer builds it at his cost, they install it, they get it operating, and then Dixon County operates it and charges monthly fees on it. So, you know, they have some motivation to want to see more of these systems because they're not really putting money into the infrastructure to a certain extent. Now, obviously, they are a public utility and they have certain state controls that they can't just like gouge people or anything. I think it's you know, they have to be realistic relative to the operating costs. But, you know, TDEC is definitely at the state level pushing for this. This is the future. They don't want to see a bunch of more large plants that are dumping into rivers. They want stuff that's, you know, discharging into the ground. So that's something that's definitely a trend. That's why I think it's important that we're having this conversation.
Right.
And it's a trend that started in the late 70s in Middle Tennessee. Started in Rutherford County and kind of spread across as Middle Tennessee has grown over the last 50 years. And, you know, it's one of those things. I think there is an opportunity here to add some additional limited use standards and make sure that we get exactly or as close to what we want as possible so that they're visibly appealing as we're traversing throughout the city and also functionally for adjacent parcels, adjacent neighbors, and how everything works.
Everyone in agreement on that?
Yes.
The standards are on page 4-149. And it is item X, decentralized wastewater treatment. And just so you are aware, under the principal use chart, to your point, Vice Mayor, the decentralized wastewater treatment is a permitted, subject to limited use standards within every district that is on there. So if there is a point where you feel, hey, we have, you know, typically speaking, CD4C probably doesn't need to have decentralized wastewater treatment. That is your highest density. I think that would probably be the best case scenario for, hey, you need conventional sewer. But the rest, and light industrial and heavy industrial, I don't see those benefiting from that because you're likely dealing with one industrial business that's not going to be able to have a decentralized wastewater treatment facility. And then for civic buildings, one firehouse or one planning and codes department building, you're probably not going to, one nature center, you're not going to have decentralized with those. So yeah, the volume would not be there for wastewater. So if you are looking to make a change to that, I would recommend 4C, light industrial, heavy industrial, and civic, if those are options that you wanted to remove.
To remove it? Makes sense to remove it from,
To not have it as a permitted use in those couple districts.
agreed. So we'll remove it, say from
4C, light industrial, heavy industrial, and civic.
civic. Okay.
Most of the industrials aren't going to use it anyways.
Okay, what other topics?
To the point that was made on that, though, I think that we should all review what does come with the requirements of those systems moving forward and make sure that we've got everything we want around them. We adopt it.
Is
And
any,
those utility uses, I know that there's several of those that have gotten quite a bit of publicity over the last few years. The gas substation that went in Burns, there was a big, lot of folks that were upset about that going in. So just please take a look at the principal use charts, look at what the conditions are, and evaluate those items. And if there's anything that pokes out to you, please let me know.
okay. Any other items for discussion?
Madam Chair, just one more, I promise.
Sure.
This one, hopefully will be an easy one.
Go ahead.
I think we've all seen all the stuff on Facebook about the concerns around Bowie Park and everything, and people developing right up to the edge of it. Now's our chance if we want to throw in a buffer. We've got a whole section on buffers. Do we want to throw in some type of undisturbed buffer for any land around Bowie Park? You know, it's that way you have a little bit of protection right up to the line. You know, you could throw in a 50-foot undisturbed buffer. It'll definitely impact the land around it. I didn't look to see how much land around Bowie is undeveloped. I don't know if it'll have an impact, but it's just something to think about.
Happen to have the map up. Along the northern piece, Bowie Nature Park is this pink section here. Along the northern piece is City Center and Bowie Meadows. This northwest corner is Dice Lampley. Those are single-family homes. Adjacent Dice Lampley Road runs the western boundary of Bowie Nature Park, and then Crow Cut runs the southern boundary here. The only property that would back up to the park that I can think of offhand would be the property next to Walmart, that has development potential that would back up to the nature park,
That may be the most important one since it'll likely be commercial.
likely.
What is that green, the dark green right in the middle of Bowie Park?
You know, I was sitting here thinking about it as you.
Is that where the nature center such is?
I think that's the fire department. May be wrong, but take a look real quick.
Neighborhood at Bowie has a I know we made it bigger.
Madam Chair, does Bowie only have one entrance in and out?
Yes.
Does.
So you could possibly,
Legal.
legal entrance, yeah.
Depends on if you're on a whole.
The house I lived in Boston, we were surrounded by a national park, or park, and we made dead ends. So that instead of having it like house, the houses were out here, and ones that went in here were only like 3 houses, and it was a dead end. And it was used for an entrance into the park, if you wanted to go that way, other than the front entrance where everybody parks. Can you hunt or anything in Bowie?
Yeah.
Maybe fish. Can you go fishing?
Can
in it?
you,
And fish in Bowie.
can you,
Yes.
what about
Not with a
archery?
gun.
Not with a gun.
How about archery?
No.
Can't do that either.
No weapons allowed.
To answer your question about that one little brown section, so the pink is civic-owned property. That small section there that's in the midst of all of the pink is a single-family residence at the end of Bowie Hollow Road that the park wraps around. So
So it is owned, or it's a separate parcel owned, not by,
it is not owned by the city of Fairview. It's owned by it's down at the end of Bowie Hollow. So that's what that is.
okay. And the current zoning buffer around Bowie, would you say it was 150 feet minimum or maximum?
Well, no,
Along Bowie Meadows, I believe they have 100 feet before a home is built. I believe there's a 50-foot buffer between the right-of-way and the property line.
Yeah, we adjusted all of that so that there was a larger buffer and no homes against, right against the park.
I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Are they allowed to have fences?
They are required to have a fence, yes.
But does it mess with the beauty of it?
They are. They're wooden 4-rail, like a horse fence style.
I'd like to see that consistency all the way around.
The fence, or
Just the buffer.
have that buffer.
Yeah.
We can add that in. I think that I've got a spot for that to add in a buffer zone around. The 50-foot buffer, but then 100 feet to the front lot line, and then I think it's a 50-foot, yes, 50-foot right of way, and then a 50-foot buffer, and that is a disturbed buffer. It is not completely undisturbed. I would like to see an undisturbed at least section of that, so that they're. Not only does it help from a stormwater perspective of maintaining the site, but it also prevents the contractor from grading right up to the property line, and maybe keeps some trees along that property line.
You want the 50-foot buffer to be undisturbed.
At least the first 25 feet. 50% of it they can disturb, but 50% has to be
Maintained.
maintained as completely undisturbed.
Okay.
I think that's a fair.
Yeah.
Around Bowie Nature Park, I think that's way more than fair. I think we could probably make that 100 feet or whatever you wanted, but I think 50 feet with at least 50% of that remaining undisturbed is great.
Is everyone in agreement about that?
Yes. Madam Chair.
Yes. I'll get out a draft resolution over to you relatively soon with the exhibit that has all of the items in there.
So the intent of the next session on February 3rd, 10th is to go through these, make sure Board of Commissioners is on board, and then bring up any other.
Or at least explain, be able to have a joint meeting with the BOC and the Planning Commission, so whenever they ask, hey, why did you remove CD4C for Commissioner Buffalini, Commissioner Hall, and Commissioner Roberts? Why did y'all recommend the removal of these items, or why did you recommend the addition of these? Y'all can have the open dialogue that typically y'all don't all get together. I know you two sit here, but I think everybody needs a voice at the table for a cause that's probably going to be here for the next 40 years. Mr. Calley, do you have anything? Mr. Ritt?
I'm all,
Mayor?
I'll have more at the next meeting.
Well, I'd like for your input on one item, since you have spoken about it. The traffic impact studies. What kind of number, or how would you like that formed? I'd love to have that discussion with everybody here to, at 20 homes or 15 homes or 15 homes, and if it's involved in a common plan of development with additional phases, or
Me personally, I feel like we can get too restrictive on that. So I feel like it should be a number, and then under that number, staff recommendation according to what is being built.
What was the number we discussed at the planning commission meeting? Was it 20, 30?
Yeah, 30 or so. I mean, I think 30 is a good number. Like, we would start it at 30 if it was on a case-by-case basis under 30, because some places really need a traffic study, and some it's a no-brainer that it wouldn't. So I think under 30, staff recommendation on that. I just don't think that if somebody puts 3 homes in,
Right.
that's kind of a much to ask if it's not something that's critical.
Sure. Vice Chair, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. What I'm wondering is, do we also need a threshold? Commercial's harder.
What's the threshold today for a commercial traffic study requirement?
1,000 peak hour trips.
Walmart wouldn't even touch 1,000, I don't think.
The
Peak hour.
it's a high threshold. It essentially says we don't get traffic studies.
You get a decent sized daycare, right? That's just got all those pickup and drop off hours. Yeah, I mean, on average throughout the day, you're not moving a lot of vehicles, but there's a moment where there probably should be a traffic study done for safety and all that. So 50 seems like at the end of the day, we can always waive it if we feel it's unnecessary. 50, I think, sounds like a good number.
50 trips, peak hour?
So
Small reduction.
they do have in here for traffic impacts for commercial spaces. More than 30,000 square feet of gross floor area of non-residential space would require a traffic impact study. Aggregate uses that would be expected to generate 500 vehicle trips or more per day, or 50 or more peak hour trips per day,
There you go.
or direct traffic access to a non-standard road. So that's already within there.
Super. Okay.
We will get everybody good with 30 homes for a traffic study?
We all good? Okay. Great. Anything else? Okay. Work session is adjourned.
We will see you all February 10th. Gosh, I can't believe we're